Raiders have hired Pete Carroll. We've got a jam-packed championship week preview. We've got a guest to talk about the Bills and the Chiefs, why the Bills will beat the Chiefs. We got Eagles Commanders preview. Also, Bronny James does not accept the invite to the Rising Stars Challenge. All that more coming up next on The Big Lead. What is up, and welcome to another episode of The Big Lead. My name is Doug McKain. I cover the Los Angeles Dodgers for Dodgers Nation. I do NFL radio for Westwood One. I cover the Rams. I've been covering sports here in LA for over a decade. And today we got a jam-packed show, and we are getting back in. This is episode 3 of The Big Lead. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. Here at The Big Lead, it's a brand new show where we're breaking down all of the hottest stories in sports, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, off-topic stuff that is not always about the X's and O's. If you're talking about it in sports, we're talking about it here. If they're talking about it anywhere, you're going to find it here on The Big Lead. So be sure to subscribe to the new channel. And we got some breaking news today. The coaching carousel continues in the National Football League. Earlier today, Adam Schefter tweeted, just in, Pete Carroll and the Raiders now have reached an agreement on a 3-year deal with the 4th-year team options. Sources tell ESPN another veteran, legendary coach has emerged. So first thing that struck me is Pete Carroll is back. And you look at that division and all the coaches, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is the only coach in that division that doesn't have a Super Bowl championship. But Pete Carroll is a very interesting hire for the Raiders. I do think it is an upgrade to Antonio Pierce. He is a Super Bowl winning head coach. He is a known culture builder, but he's not Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson was their guy. Tom Brady was rumored to be heavily involved in this coaching hiring process. And that's who the Raiders focused on early on. They wanted Ben Johnson. He ends up going to the Bears. And I do think, though, that this is a good move for the Raiders, because the Raiders are in a position where you don't have a quarterback right now. And I think you could use a stopgap transition level quarterback. And there's a guy out there that could be very available that has a great relationship now, once again, with Pete Carroll, and that is Russell Wilson. So if I'm the Raiders, I'm getting Russell Wilson in silver and black, and then I'm probably drafting someone like Jackson Dart, someone to really fill that spot where you don't need a quarterback to start in day one. And the Raiders can start playing football at at least competitive level once again. But I do like this hire. I won't give it an A, but I do think it's a solid B hire. It's a B hire. I think you're not going to see the Pete Carroll that we saw years ago, where he was the hottest coach in the National Football League, and you had him leading the Legion of Boom defense for the Seattle Seahawks. And that vaunted cover 3 style of defense that started to fail him towards the end, I think he's going to reinvent himself. I think that has to be the plan right now. But as of right now, give it a B. But I'm bringing in my man. You guys know him. You love him. He played D1 college football for the University of Connecticut, the great John Robinson IV. We're going to be breaking down all the playoff games today. But John, just initial reaction to the Raiders hiring Pete Carroll.
So I love the decision to go after a coach who's done it before. I like the fact that Pete Carroll has established himself, obviously winning a national championship at USC, winning a Super Bowl with the Seahawks. Now, I don't love them getting rid of Antonio Pierce. Think he deserved a little bit more of a shot. You really cannot win in this league without a quarterback. But I do agree. You need somebody who could build a culture there. I mean, the carousel of coaches that have coming in and out of that organization have been ridiculous. And I think with Tom Brady being the guy to go out there and pick a Pete Carroll, that means that there is some sort of plan in place. But I'm with you. I think there's a lot of consideration about what are they going to do at quarterback. I love the idea of going to get Jackson Dart. I'd even love even more if they traded up to the #1 pick to get Shedeur Sanders. I think that would make headways, especially with how Shedeur has talked about his relationship with Brady and how he's inspired to be like him. So, I mean, I like the decision. I think you're trying to establish a winning culture there in Oakland. I'm just not 100% sure how it's going to work out. I definitely have to see who is going to be commanding that offense in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and that's the number one thing too, is he's not an offensive head coach, right? And that really has been what the Raiders were trying to pursue. If you look at guys they interviewed, I mean, they were heavily involved with 7 other candidates. Your guy, Aaron Glenn, is someone that they interviewed and they were high on as well. But I do think that kind of where the Raiders are at from a brand name standpoint, a stability standpoint, he does bring that cachet. A lot of USC fans are Raiders fans, and they're happy about this today. But a lot of times when people go to Vegas, especially entertainers, it's okay, I've had my career already peak, right? I mean, look, Usher is killing it in Vegas, but this isn't Usher when he was 8701 Usher and his heyday Confessions Usher, right? I mean, that's where you go to Vegas when the career kind of is over, and then you kind of set those dates. But I do think, like anything else, it's going to be about who he ends up adding around him and who else does he hire. And right now they're saying that he is trying to retain Patrick Graham, their defensive coordinator. His contract is up, but they're going to try to retain him, and they're going to fill out the position with some of the guys that are currently there on the staff. Darrell Bevel, former defensive coordinator Gus Bradley could be in the mix. Nick Sorensen, his son Nate Carroll, I'm sure he'll try to get in the mix as well. And then Brian Schneider. So I think that you see a lot of these guys, though, it's like, man, you got to pry them away from coaching. Bill Belichick going to North Carolina, Pete Carroll. I mean, there was talk last January, he might even go to UCLA. I mean, there was some talk about that. So clearly he was not done. And energy-wise, this guy feels like he's the youngest 73-year-old in coaching. So I do like that about him.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a lot of, you know, when they say you retire, a lot of guys can't retire, Doug, because when they retire, like, what else is for them to do? What keeps a Pete Carroll awake at night, what keeps a Bill Belichick awake at night is going to coach. Like, coaching is what 100%. Ignites their fire. So I think this idea that, like, we have to push these guys out of the door because they're older, as long as they're able to evolve with the new landscape of what football is becoming on the collegiate and pro level, I do think they should still be allotted the opportunity to coach, especially with the resumes that a lot of these guys have.
That's the biggest thing. Now, are you on board with the idea of adding a Russell Wilson? Because I do think it'd be interesting to even add a Justin Fields. It'd make more sense to me.
I actually do not want to see a reunion between between Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. I am more inclined to see a Justin Fields in that position, a rookie quarterback. I think it's about really establishing a legitimate future in Las Vegas. I think the biggest issue with that organization has been they haven't had any type of consistent continuity. Even with Derek Carr at the helm for all those years, it was so streaky and up and down. It was one year they looked like a playoff team, another year they were abysmal. I think trying to have a level of consistency is huge for that team. And so because of that, I am all for them reaching for more of a future than a stopgap with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and I just texted with someone I know that covers the Raiders, and he believes that they'll bring in Russ and that those two have kind of buried the hatchet. Of course, they kind of had a nasty divorce, so I don't know who brought the flowers and the chocolates to who, but clearly they're on the same page once again. Another interesting thing we were talking about it yesterday with the Jets hire is the relationship with the general manager, and that cannot be understated. It's the owner, general manager, coach dynamic that a lot of times determine how successful an organization is going to be. I mean, I cover the Rams, Les Snead, Sean McVay, and Stan Kroenke, they're in lockstep. When they wanted to trade for Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford, they were about to go on a plane, and Stan Kroenke told them, "Do it. You got my full support." With what we see with Davis with the Raiders, a little bit more of a mom and pop thing, and I think too the $1 million question is the involvement of Tom Brady in this situation. So yeah, look, I think it's a good hire. It kind of makes them relevant once again. Having said that, though, you look at the list of names they also interviewed. You interviewed Aaron Glenn, Robert Saleh, Vance Joseph, Ron Rivera, Steve Spagnuolo, and you didn't go after any of those young offensive coaches. I mean, no Joe Brady, no Kellen Moore, no Liam Cohen. It almost feels like to me like the Raiders. Shout out to Chris Berman. The Raiders are almost stuck in, a couple of generations ago when more teams are going offensive-minded head coaches. Yeah,
I think a lot of these coaches it's assumed that like the head coach and the quarterback are like this pairing, and so you look at the offensive-minded coach, but you got to look at like your DeMeco Ryans of the world who are able to have success despite not being an offensive coach. It's really about who is Pete Carroll going to hire? You know, can you poach Bobby Slowick from the Texans and then groom him to be the next Las Vegas Raiders head coach? Maybe. But ultimately, if Pete Carroll can bring in a coordinator who understands offense and can get the most out of whoever they bring in at quarterback, it works. It's just about the pieces within the organization. It's about the staff and the continuity. All those things matter. So you can have a Pete Carroll as your head coach, but who is going to be calling those plays for your quarterback?
That's the number one thing. But I will say, like I said, that division, I cannot wait to see the first handshake between him and Harbaugh. I'll never forget when Harbaugh, Mr. Khaki Pants, tucking in the crew sweatshirt to the khaki pants is definitely a wardrobe decision. You're always looking fly. I mean, I don't think you would advise of that doing that. What thoughts on just tucking the sweatshirt to the khakis?
I mean, it's a little much for me. I'm more of a quarter zip windbreaker type of guy when I like my coat from the coaches. But listen, give Pete Carroll a lot of credit for his Air Monarchs, man. He never puts them away.
Yeah, I know. I remember hearing a story that they tried to give him some more updated Nikes, but his feet were too wide. But yeah, I cannot wait to see that first handshake between Harbaugh and Pete Carroll. Remember the one when they were at USC? He's like, "What's your deal?" And they were upset with each other. But yep, guys, we are going to switch gears and we're going to dive right into Championship Sunday. And earlier today, I got a chance to catch up with Eric Wood. Eric Wood is a fantastic podcast host, does radio, but also he's a former player. He's a former Pro Bowler with the Buffalo Bills, and he has a great podcast called Centered Around Buffalo. He recently did an episode with Dan Orlovsky. I highly recommend going to check that one out. We talked to him before this show, and if you are someone that wants to see the Bills win and you're having a little Chiefs fatigue, you don't want to see them go 3 for 3, you don't want to see that Chiefs three-peat, well, he's going to get you ready for Sunday's game, and he'll have you believing that the Bills are going to win. So here's my conversation with Eric Wood, and when we get back, we're going to preview the Eagles and the Commanders. We're talking about Jaden Daniels' mom's advice to Jaden Daniels, a little controversial, and Bronny James declining the spot at the Rising Stars game. Was that a good choice? We'll talk about that, but first, my conversation with Eric Wood. And here joining us from the Centered on Buffalo podcast, he played in the National Football League for a long time. He was a Pro Bowler in 2015. He played for the Buffalo Bills. And here to talk about the Buffalo Bills AFC Championship game against the Chiefs is Eric Wood. Eric, thank you so much for joining today, my man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Looking forward to catching up.
Yeah, Eric, the first thing we got to talk about, of course, is this is a Bills team that not a lot of people thought they were going to be this team that was going to get back to the championship game, be Super Bowl contenders. Just kind of what's your overall assessment of how this year played out, just getting to this game and giving us what could be the best game for the rest of the year?
Yeah, there was a lot of people that doubted what the Bills could do this season for a number of reasons. First off, you move on from Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Mitch Morse, the center that had been there with Josh Allen since Josh got drafted to the Bills. You move on from all those pieces, and people didn't know what the Bills had, the talent that they had developed, the guys that they had brought in to fill in to those shoes. And then also people thought the Dolphins were going to light up the division this year. Others thought the Jets and Aaron Rodgers were, and the Bills in consistent fashion like they've been, ever since essentially 2019, are back in the playoffs and making a run at this thing.
Yeah, and I really want to start with Josh Allen, of course. He's continued to evolve. A lot of people debate, is this a rivalry? Josh Allen, who has all the success against him in the regular season. Josh Allen 4-1 against Mahomes and the Chiefs in the regular season, but 0-3 against the Chiefs in the playoffs. What needs to be different about this Bills performance and specifically Josh Allen to get this win on the road against a team that's trying to make history, being the first team to three-peat in the history of the league?
Well, I don't think it has a lot to do with Josh for the reasons that, we haven't got past the Chiefs in the playoffs. And yes, he's got the 0-3 record, but in those 3 games, averaged 28 points a game, 342 yards of total offense per game, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. I think we would lock all of that in right now heading to Kansas City tomorrow if you said, we could just take that. Where the Bills have fallen short in the playoffs is putting pressure on Patrick Mahomes. His quarterback rating against the Bills in the regular season, 87. That jumps to 127 in the playoffs versus the Bills. They have not been able to put pressure on him, and they haven't been able to get the Chiefs off the field consistently enough. Now, Taylor Rapp, the Bills starting safety, he's going to be out for the game this weekend, but pretty much everyone else is healthy. That's a different change compared to what's happened in those previous matchups in the playoffs against the Chiefs when we've gone in with a super banged up defense.
Yeah, and you look at that matchup right there and trying to get to this Chiefs offense, and it's a very interesting Chiefs team. They've only scored over 30 points in a game just twice. And it almost feels like if you're Kansas City, it's okay, keep it close, and Mahomes will get us past the finish line. But you look at this Bills defense, they can do a lot of things that can make life difficult for him as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is it's a weird dynamic because everyone was so used to the early success of Patrick Mahomes' career where they have this high flying offense and they got guys like Tyreek Hill out there and they're taking the top off the defense. They have all these explosives and, they use the Tyreek Hill draft capital to go bring in a bunch of defensive guys. You bring in a Trent McDuffie, you bring in a George Karlaftis, you got Hall of Famer Chris Jones on that side of the ball. You got one of the best defensive coordinators in football in Steve Spagnuolo. So the way that they've kind of shifted this team is, look, our defense is good enough. We don't have to go chase explosive. We just take care of the football and we know how to win. Now, they were very fortunate at the end of the games this year, and that's no secret. That's not a slight on the Chiefs. They're a great team regardless if Isaiah Likely's toe's not on the line in week 1 and the Ravens win that one. Against the Broncos, a 30-yard field goal block. They were on the ropes late in the season. A ball banks off the uprights, or else we'd be playing this game in Orchard Park and not in Arrowhead. But regardless, this team knows how to win, and they have so much experience throughout the roster. They've played in so many big games that it just seems like, they can figure it out at the end of the game. And so that's where, you saw Sean McDermott get super aggressive in the earlier matchup this season where they went for it on 4th and 2 and Josh runs it in from 26 yards out, one of the plays of the year. But the reason they went for it there was because they didn't want to give the Chiefs the ball back only down 5 if they kicked the field goal.
Yeah, and I think you look at the first matchup this season, you kind of break it down and you almost think, oh, wait, the Chiefs actually lost that game and the Bills won that game, but it's how do you kind of recreate what you had in that one? And you look at Spagnuolo's defense and going up against Josh Allen, and you still commit to the run if you're the Bills, knowing basically, hey, if you spread things out, if you give Josh Allen the ability to go and make plays, he can go for 400 yards. You can put the ball in the air. You can get those explosive plays, or you kind of go with what got you here, and that's stick with that run and try to establish that early on the game.
Yeah, I think the way the Bills are running the football right now, you got to test this Kansas City defense with the run game. James Cook has been phenomenal in the playoffs. Besides Josh Allen, probably their best weapon on offense. They run for 357 yards in the playoffs through 2 games so far against the number 1 and the number 3 ranked run defense in the NFL. And so I expect the Bills to keep the ball on the ground just like they had the last 2 weeks, but then use that to be able to set up the play action, attack these the linebackers in coverage for Kansas City. Kansas City surrenders the most yards per play to tight ends in the entire NFL, and that's not an accident. It's because you can attack these linebackers in coverage.
Yeah, 32 rushing touchdowns, a top 10 rushing offense for the Bills. And just the offense as a whole has been explosive really for the last 10, 12 weeks. I mean, they've been fantastic. Basically getting 27 points per game, 4 touchdowns. What needs to happen in this one going up against this Chiefs defense that can get pressure with their front 4, has a lot of dynamic playmakers? What do you think is the biggest key for having that offense go on the road and scoring points at Arrowhead?
Yeah, I think it's eliminating your mistakes, and that's penalties, whether that's pre-snap or holdings, and not getting way behind the sticks and allowing Spagnuolo to be super creative with his blitz packages and all that. I think establishing the run can help take the crowd out of it a little bit and really help mitigate those blitzes. Kansas City blitzes 5th most in the NFL, and they're creative with it. They'll come off the slots. They'll bring corner blitzes. I mean, they come from everywhere, so it's tough to diagnose. And then when you're playing at Arrowhead, you can't communicate verbally at the line of scrimmage. And so you got to be able to have some, nonverbal answers to the blitzes, whether that's hots, whether that's, sight adjustments by the receivers. You got to be able to handle those. And so I think taking care of the football is pinnacle, but you don't want to be overly conservative either, because despite what this Chiefs team has done throughout this season and kind of a lackluster offensive performance, they always have the ability with number 15 to put up some points.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the 2 takeaways they had in week 11. That was big. And you look at this Chiefs team, they don't turn the football over. The Bills, they don't turn the football over. Not trying to manifest anything for the Chiefs, but I think people that don't want to see them in the Super Bowl are kind of hoping for a turnover there. What has been the key to this Bills offense, getting an NFL high 35 takeaways and only turn the ball over 8 times this entire season?
Well, a lot of that's just making good decisions. Obviously, the coaching staff will say we emphasize it. We talk about it. We practice it. We practice ball security. We practice taking the ball away. But, a lot of it is the guys just out there executing. The guys on defense are going after the ball constantly. You saw the play by Terrell Bernard where he punches the ball out of Mark Andrews' arms last week. He's not even going for the tackle in that instance. He's just punching at the football and comes up with the fumble. And so they'll take some chances like that defensively to try and force turnovers, just understanding, throughout league history, generally winning the turnover margin is going to give you a great chance to win the football game. And then offensively, Josh Allen has done a great job protecting the football this year. Now, they haven't had, knock on wood, any fumbles outside of, a couple from Josh Allen this season, but he's statistically having the most efficient season of all time in limiting negative plays. He has the least amount of combined sacks, fumbles, interceptions in a season in NFL history. And so you got to give him credit for, at times taking those chances and putting on a show and getting those big boy highlights that we love. And then at other times, simply just taking what the defense gives them.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to jinx anything, but Josh Allen, the Bills, they haven't committed turnover in their last 4 playoff games. That's the first time in history that we've seen that. But the Chiefs have gone 8 straight games without a turnover. So there, we'll put the jinx more on the Chiefs on this one. Now, as far as the chess match goes, I think this is the most fascinating part of the game is Spagnuolo versus this Bills offense. And if you get up front and you're able to get pressure and you're this Chiefs team that can do that at a high clip, then you're in a good spot. But if you are sending different looks and he's doing different coverage rotations towards his way, I mean, things can get a little bit to a point where you're trying to expose that. What do you think is the biggest key for Josh Allen in this one to make sure that really this offense that we've seen does the same thing and you basically take advantage of that?
Yeah, you simply got to find your answers. In the first game, they were attacking Johnson, who was their corner filling in for Watson that was injured. Watson's back now, but, in the first matchup, they had 2 big plays down the field to Cooper beating the blitz, and, that was the answer. So you got to know the answer and anticipate. The blitz is coming. They're going to dial it up. They're probably going to give you something you haven't seen. So find your answers, get rid of the ball. At times, it might be taking a sack because – you snap the ball, the play's dead, and, try and make something happen. And if not, don't put the ball in harm's way. But when you blitz at that rate, you can be burned. And in the first matchup against the Chiefs, Josh was able to burn him on the blitz pretty good.
Now, as far as these secondary players, the guys like Amari Cooper, has been a little quiet lately. He's been all in. He's still embracing it. He just wants to win. How important is that for this Bills offense? And on the other side, too, it's kind of getting those second and third weapons involved and having the edge from that standpoint.
Yeah, I honestly think it's an advantage for the Bills that they don't have a true number 1 receiver. Oftentimes you go into a game and 2 things. One, if you have one of those big time number 1 receivers, they want the ball. You got to force it to them early, keep them into the game, keep them happy. And then also the defenses know that. So they put their best cover guy on them. They roll coverages to them. Each and every week, it could be a different player for the Bills that leads them in catches, in yards. And that makes them tough to defend, tough to cover. And look, I mean, Mac Hollins led the team in touchdown receptions this year. He was brought in essentially to be a core special teamer and play, just a minor role on offense. He ends up being this unbelievable blocking wide receiver and a red zone threat based upon his size at 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah, and Dalton Kincaid, when he has success, the team has success. The last time they faced each other, you look at the numbers and production he put up. The Bills are undefeated when he has over 50 yards receiving. Allen last week, in the win, he had 127 passing yards. For the passing game, is it about Kincaid? Is it about Cooper? Or is it just trying to find what works and take advantage of those mismatches?
Yeah, all year they've had this mentality of everybody eats. And so find the matchup that you want to attack throughout the game and just run with it. So I expect them to stay the same. Now, I would expect Kincaid to get some looks, just the Bills understanding that Chiefs have struggled defending tight ends throughout the season.
Give me an X factor on offense.
I'll say James Cook, and I say that not only in the run game, but also in the pass game, because when you get blitzes, oftentimes your easiest answer is swinging it out to the back. And if he's able to make guys miss out there in space, especially when there's a blitz, there's not that many defenders left behind the line of scrimmage. And so give me James Cook as an X factor.
How about on the defensive side?
I want to say Ed Oliver, because interior pressure drives quarterbacks nuts. That's where you can really affect the quarterback in the pocket, is especially with the interior rush. Patrick Mahomes' pocket presence is so good that oftentimes the edge rushers don't affect him that much because you can maneuver them. When it's coming right up the gut, that can play a factor. If the Chiefs are going to still roll with their starting left guard, Joe Thuney, playing left tackle, and they have Caliendo at left guard, that's got to be a matchup where the Bills can make some hay there.
And as far as your biggest concern about what this Chiefs team presents, is it Patrick Mahomes? Is it Chris Jones in the defensive? If there's one big concern that this Chiefs team gives you, what is it?
Probably Mahomes. I mean, I'd love to get creative here and say the biggest concern is something with the defense, but it's Mahomes. It's Mahomes in the fourth quarter, and I mean, shoot, NFL Network's been playing it all week, the 13-second game, and I've just seen it happen too many times where Patrick Mahomes finds a way to win at the end. And so that's kind of how I started it off. You got to be able to put pressure on him in the pocket. And I feel like the reason the Bills have been eliminated these last 4 years of the playoffs, when you felt like they had a phenomenal roster, it's a lack of being able to put the pressure on, Mahomes last year, Burrow the year before, Mahomes the previous 2 years.
Yeah, I also want to ask you too, is just from a mindset standpoint, this Chiefs team trying to three-peat, the Bills trying to get to the Super Bowl for the first time since 1993. It feels like this is a Bills team that's ready to get over the hump. Would you agree?
It certainly feels like it, but you still got to go out and execute. And, Kansas City wants to set history and get the first three-peat ever in the NFL. Like, that's something they really wanted. It also adds some pressure to them. Bills had plenty of pressure on them. Josh Allen's got plenty of pressure on him because, they're trying to get over that hump and get to where Kansas City is. And so there's great narratives on both sides of this, and it's going to be a fun one.
Hey, Bills Mafia is going to be out in force, and we know that Bills fans everywhere are hoping and praying for this. And I think that fans that don't want to see the Chiefs and the little Chiefs fatigue, Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl, are rooting for the Bills. We're going to do one of those maps. I think a lot of people around the country would be a Bills logo inside their state, outside, of course, Kansas City. But prediction time. Eric, can you give us a score prediction and just kind of tell us how you think this game will play out?
My guess, and I said it on my Center on Buffalo podcast, is 24-17 Bills. Both these teams sustain long drives. I don't think there's going to be a ton of possessions in this game. And I feel like both these teams will stall out one time and have to kick a field goal. And ultimately, Buffalo gets it done. I could even see them being up a couple scores at the end, and Kansas City gets one to make it 24-17.
Hey, Buffalo fans are going to like to hear that. But, Eric, we got to have you on the show at some point again to talk about your career, by the way, former first-round pick, Pro Bowler. But the podcast is incredible. Even if you're not a Bills fan, you should tune in to talk NFL football, listen to football from someone that's a former player that knows the game as well as anyone. The podcast that you do with Dan Orlovsky was a must-listen. So all football fans, go out there, watch it, subscribe to his channel. And Eric, we thank you so much. And hey, good luck to your Buffalo Bills this Sunday, my man.
I appreciate it. That was a fun one, man.
Oh, awesome, man. Anytime. Thanks a lot, Eric. Really appreciate it, man.
Yep, for sure.
And that was Eric Wood. Definitely go check out his podcast. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Now, for me, I think the Bills are going to win. I think the Bills are going to find a way to break through against Kansas City on Sunday on the road. This is a different version of the Bills. This is a team that knows how to possess the football, doesn't turn the football over, that runs the football. Against the Ravens, that was one of the keys to their success. Is they ran the ball 36 times for 147 yards. You had 3 touchdowns. I think it's going to be a very similar strategy. I got Bills over the Chiefs 29-22. But I'm going to bring in John Robinson, the fourth, for your prediction.
Yeah, so Doug, I'm going to be honest, I'm taking the Chiefs. I mean, if there's any player who has been chosen by the football gods, it has always been Patrick Mahomes. He is blessed by the football gods beyond belief, talent, and the way games have ended for him. This is those moments during that Patriots dynasty, Doug, where it's just like, I have to see it to believe it. I want to believe that the Bills can pull off this upset, but it is hard to go against the baby goat of the NFL right now. He's just remarkable in what they've been able to do this year. Doug, in a down year, they lost 2 games in the regular season.
All true, but as I point out, this is not that explosive Chiefs team. They've only scored over 30 points twice this season, and I look at the offensive line for the Bills, getting Brown back, having Cook, having the inability to get to JA7. That's going to be very difficult for a vaunted Chiefs defense. I think he's going to be upright. You got better conditions. And look, at some point, the tide has to turn. Allen's 4-1 against Mahomes in the regular season, but Mahomes is 3-0 in the playoffs. And it's very difficult to three-peat. This isn't a Bills team that was expected to be one of the dominant teams in football, but it just feels like this is Josh Allen and the Bills year. Give me the Bills in an upset. Do it for America, okay? The Bills win, America wins, unless you want to see a three-peat. Look, I'm always here for greatness. And I certainly believe that Patrick Mahomes has already cemented himself as one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. But the Bills haven't been to the Super Bowl since 1993. I got Bills Mafia on Sunday. But we're going to switch gears and talk about Philly versus Washington. And this, I think, is possibly going to be as entertaining. I mean, this Commanders offense is just explosive. They went and beat the number 1 seed Lions on the road. And both of these teams feel like they're heading in different directions. The Commanders already feel like they're the overachieving team, the team that's playing with house money, that have a bona fide superstar in Jaden Daniels that is going to be a perennial Pro Bowler. On the flip side, you have an Eagles team that, yes, you have the most explosive player in the sport in Saquon Barkley, but you also have a Jalen Hurts that hasn't quite figured things out from a passing standpoint. And I do want to start with Saquon Barkley and previewing this one. Saquon Barkley has 145 plus rushing yards against the Commanders in each of their games this season. He had 205 yards on 26 attempts against the Rams, had the 2 explosive runs, 7.9 yards per carry, and he's good for a 100-yard game no matter what. He's at 100 yards or more on the ground in 8 of the last 9 Eagles games. You can't stop him. You can try to contain him. I think the key for Washington on defense is try to get Jalen Hurts to win the game with his arms and not his legs, because Hurts has not been the same guy that we saw a couple years ago. He hasn't had the same chemistry with A.J. Brown, who you look at A.J. Brown's numbers, you're like, this is supposed to be one of the best receivers in the sport. Hasn't looked like that in quite some time. A.J. Brown is out there reading self-help books, and he is really causing a buzz that way, but he had 7 targets, just 2 receptions for 14 yards. And he had just 10 yards in the wild card round matchup. He needs to stop reading and start receiving. And a lot of that has to do with Jalen Hurts, because you look at Jalen Hurts, he went 15 of 20 against the Rams for 128 yards, had a 91.2 passer rating, didn't make mistakes. But even the wild card round, 131 yards. He hasn't thrown for over 180 yards in a while. Last 7 games, he's gone over 180 yards just once. So you need some more production from Jalen Hurts. I think that if they're going to play single high and load the box against Saquon Barkley and try to stop the run, he has to find a way to get the ball to his talented receivers. That is how you win the football game. But if they're not taking advantage of that, and the Commanders have any success against the run, I think that the Commanders can go up there and pull up the upset.
Yeah, Doug. I mean, I'm taking the Commanders to pull off the upset this weekend. I am all in on Jaden Daniels going to the Super Bowl and representing the Washington Commanders in the NFC. Jaden Daniels is poise personified, Doug. I haven't seen a young player in my years of watching this sport look this poised at such a young age. And I think him, the idea is he has house money. They had 2 wins a season ago. They're in the NFC Championship. What can they lose? Everything is everything to gain at this point. However, it feels like they feel like they can do it. And I think when it comes to this matchup with the Eagles, Doug, they've been in multiple shootouts this season. If this is a game that who's the first to get to 35 points, they have the offense to go for 35 points against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know that defensive line is major, and they lost a guard for the Washington Commanders, so there might be a matchup issue there. But Jaden Daniels, man, I'd almost argue that right now, is he not the best quarterback in the NFC?
I mean, you could certainly make a strong case in year one that he is as accurate and throws one of the most catchable balls, and the talent certainly is there. I do think, though, it really is going to come down to can the Eagles offense really take advantage? And you look at the key matchups there, we'll kind of go switch there. Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Sanders up against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. If Hurts throws more, he's going to need more pass protection. And that's a Commanders pass rush. They were 11th in sacks this season. You saw the success they had against the Lions, and Armstrong and Deron Payne, Dante Fowler, Jonathan Allen. I mean, those guys can get after Jalen Hurts. And we saw against the Rams, Jalen Hurts wasn't great through the air, but he busted that first run for a big touchdown. So I think from that standpoint, which quarterback is going to get the edge on the ground? Because Daniels, he had 51 yards on 16 attempts, and when Philly beat Washington, he held them to just 18 yards. And then when they lost to them, he had 81 yards rushing. So when Daniels has been able to get yards on the ground against the Eagles team, they won the game. So that to me is a big one too. He throws such a pretty ball. You almost don't realize how smooth and fluid he is as a runner.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, I watched Michael Irvin compare him to if Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes,
I like that.
Some reason made an offspring. They made Jaden Daniels. I like it because I think the athleticism is very Lamar-esque, not as explosive as Lamar. I think Lamar's the most explosive ever. And then the creativity and poise is very Patrick Mahomes-esque. And so you get like this perfect balance with Jaden Daniels. But I think the other thing that we need to talk about when it comes to this team and this matchup is shout out to Dan Quinn.
Absolutely. No, 100%. I mean, Dan Quinn against this Eagles offense is really going to be aggressive. I mean, early in the season, you saw them just cover two, kind of basic vanilla. Then as the year progressed, he's not going to go down without a fight. I mean, he's going to definitely try to land some haymakers while he's out there. And that to me is one of the biggest storylines in this game too, is look, we know what the Eagles are capable of. And I think that there's a world where if you just compare both rosters, the Eagles are just so damn talented across the board that they might not play their best game like we saw against the Rams and just still win because they're just so talented. One of the best offensive lines in the sport. You have Jalen Carter, who's emerging really as a star. I mean, he absolutely just wrecked Bo Limmer last week to essentially end that game. And I think that's kind of where it's at too. I mean, you look at the Eagles pass rush. He had 5 sacks, 6 QB hits on 44 attempts, but they weren't blitzing. I mean, you had 3 sacks with Nolan Smith and Jalen Green. So that to me is a big one too, because I do really think that with the with the Commanders out with Sam Cosmi, like they only gave 1 sack. So are they going to be able to get to Jaden Daniels?
They're going to have to. You cannot. I will say this for sure, and I think you and I will both agree to this. I'm more scared of Jaden Daniels with time in the pocket to create than I am of Jalen Hurts, even at this point in their careers.
100%. And if you give him time, like he got sacked once in 35 pass attempts against the Bucs. Against the Lions, he was kept clean. No sacks. And you know the weapons he has. And I think we're looking at key matchups, X factors. We know our boy Scary Terry from Ohio State. We know Terry McLaurin. There you go. Yeah, OH, right?
Come on.
We're just bandwagon. Whoever won the national championship, that's our team. But Terry McLaurin, you look at the 6 targets, 4 receptions, 87 yards, a touchdown, and the wild card round, 89 yards. He's been a guy who's been at around 100 yards, but that offense, they were kind of managing things after getting that big lead. And then I think the other interesting one is even bigger X factor is Naomi Brown. I mean, 89 yards in a touchdown against the Lions, and he had 98 yards there in the wild card round. You have 2 legitimate guys that can stretch the field, that can get those big chunk plays, those explosives down the field. And also Zach Ertz, he scored a touchdown 3 of their last 4 games. So Jaden Daniels has the weapons. For some reason, this guy like almost doesn't realize he's a rookie, right? It's almost like Caleb Williams came in and it was Chicago, the Heisman Trophy. Wait a minute. Last time I checked, Jaden Daniels is a Heisman Trophy winner. He was the number 2 pick somehow. To give a shout out to Stuart Scott, the greatest Sports Center anchor of all time. He's cooler than the other side of the pillow.
Yeah, no question. I mean, he's the guy. I'm excited to see this matchup, Doug. It is going to be a great game this weekend.
Thoughts on Bijan on Brian Robinson, though? Because I think Brian Robinson, 77 yards on 15 attempts against the Lions. Also have Austin Eckler, 47 yards on 6 attempts. Question I have for you. Both of these teams have talent on offense.
Yeah.
If this was like week 5 or last season, I gave you both these rosters, you would say it's the Eagles, especially with Saquon Barkley. But coming off that win against Detroit, almost feels like offensively, somehow, some way on the road, a Jaden Daniels-led Commanders team have the advantage on the offensive side of the football.
You know what's weird? It's like you change one piece to a team, you start realizing how good everybody else around that player is. Because De'Ami Brown was the butt of all of Amon-Ra St. Brown's jokes for about 2 years. Amon-Ra St. Brown knows who De'Ami Brown is now. Olamide Zaccheaus was casted off by the Eagles. He's had some stellar performances by them late in the season. A lot of people, and me included, I thought Austin Eckler was not worth paying money for because I didn't know how great he was in between the tackles. But the way they utilized him on this Commanders offense, shout out to Cliff Kingsbury, he's having a resurgence of a season. And then Brian Robinson, I mean, this is the best season he's had in his career. And you can only look at one real common denominator on this, and it's the addition of Jaden Daniels. He has maximized this Commanders roster, and now we're looking at these players way different than how we did a season ago.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself, is that you got that factor, and then there's just vibes check, right? Yeah. Commanders going out the field, high-fiving Magic Johnson. It's okay. We are in this new era, this new ownership group. You make the playoffs for the first time in a long time, and then you're going up against a hated team. And then you got the other side. I mean, it's A.J. Brown, right? I mean, he should be putting up numbers, having success, reading his self-help books. It's kind of interesting. It's a self-help book. I kind of wish it was like a crime novel, right? Or something that wasn't, inner excellence is cool because it makes sense, but it'd almost be funny if it was just not that, right? But prediction time. This one for me, you already you took your prediction. You said you got the Commanders.
Yeah.
I got the Eagles 30-24. I know it sounds crazy, but look, I prepped for that Eagles-Rams game. I know a lot about this Eagles team. You go position by position. It's almost like it doesn't matter if the vibes are good. No. It doesn't matter if things are clicking. Saquon Barkley is a player that we deserve to see in the Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley is a player that is really an all-time talent, in my opinion, as far as just pound for pound. And I also want to point out, too, I mean, you're from the East Coast.
Yeah.
These teams hate each other. These Eagles
hate each other.
And the Commanders, fan bases, the teams hate each other. They've met in the playoffs once, and it was in 1990. And it was really interesting. The Philadelphia head coach, Buddy Ryan, he told reporters that Philly would beat down Washington so bad that they would be carted off in body bags. And in that game, the Washington players were dropping like flies. 9 Washington players left that game hurt, and Philly won 28-14. So I got the Eagles 30-24. I think it's going to have some shootout vibes. I don't think the Eagles even want to score that many points. No. But I just think somehow, some way, Jaden Daniels and them will. So we got to score, and then it hopefully will bring the best out of the Eagles if you're an Eagles fan.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a race to 35, Doug. I think this is the 32. I got a 32-35 ball game in favor of the Commanders. I think it's a race to 35, and I think you're right. I mean, can they control time of possession? If the Eagles don't control time of possession, I think they can be in trouble.
Hey, and lots of pressure on the Eagles team. And hopefully, actually, I'm rooting for the Eagles because the Eagles win, probably get Donovan McNabb on the show. So fly, Eagles, fly. And then Donovan McNabb going to join the show because I want to ask him about that picture of Jaden Daniels where he's wearing the Donovan McNabb jersey. And that's what we're going to switch gears to next is Jaden Daniels, who's having this incredible rookie season. The Bears are somewhere kicking themselves, punching air because you didn't draft Jaden Daniels. And a story came out about Jaden Daniels' mom, and his mom is his agent. His mom does a lot of things for him as far as organizing his life and really getting him to where he is today. His mother, Regina Jackson, though, isn't messing around with girls trying to date her son. She said some girls out here, she's got a Jaden Daniels wall, and her mama says, hey, honey, you're going to be the one to get him. And I know that sounds crazy, but I guarantee there's someone who's trying to get their hooks on Jaden Daniels. So thank God he's got a mama like me because it ain't happening. I bet she did say something like that. That's what Jaden Daniels said when he was told about what his mom said. Now, I find this pretty interesting. And my initial thoughts on this is, first of all, this is like way too inside someone's private life. But I mean, if I'm in the Eagles war room, I'm probably saying a lot of pretty ladies to the Commander's hotel or trying to find some way to I don't know, make him think something different. But work for KD. KD feels like he hasn't had any marriages or anything like that. But it's just really interesting. I mean, some people might take this the wrong way and think, okay, his mom is too much in his business and controlling him. And I just think that, look, if it's working, why mess with it?
Yeah, his mom is doing the right thing. This is a real serious thing that happens to professional athletes. I just watched an interview of Bradley Roby. You know who Bradley Roby is?
Yes.
Ohio State.
Yep.
He talked about how at his first 2 years in the NFL, he was on track to be a great player. Do you know what he said his distraction was, Doug? Women. He said his lust demons were probably the biggest detractor for him.
Lust demons.
Lust demons.
You coined that phrase?
I coined that.
Oh,
phrase.
you did? Okay.
I coined that phrase.
I like it.
But they were using other words on the show to describe. So this is a family-friendly show. But the lust demons are the reason why Bradley Roby was not able to achieve the level of career that he says he wanted to have. So Jaden Daniels' mom is doing what great moms do and is trying to make sure her son has his head on straight and isn't distracted, because this moment in history for Jaden is huge.
Hey, I mean, it's tough to argue with the results. And look, she was asked, hey, what is going to be the biggest concern for your son, the biggest challenge? And her answer was just them girls. So we'll see. Like, is he Jaden Tebow? Is he? I'm calling him Maiden Les Daniels. I don't know. I'm trying to work on some stuff, but they did say there was that thing about him doing all the VR stuff, and like how that's taking his game to the next level. Maybe kind of the VR he's using that. Who knows? I mean, no. Because of it probably gives him those progressions and things that keeps him sharp. But all I gotta say, I mean, if you're a lady out there and you're gonna go towards Jaden Daniels, wait for his mom's gonna give you the Derrick Henry stiff arm to the ground if you're gonna touch your son.
What do you think the offer is gonna be when Jaden Daniels finally retires when he's 40? The bachelor contract that he's gonna receive once his playing career is over.
That's must-see TV. That will be must-see TV. And I'm pretty sure that the only rings they're gonna be on his fingers are gonna be Super Bowl rings. But shout out to Jaden Daniels' mom. Now, lastly here, speaking of kids, speaking of young, talented athletes, debatable, but we're going to talk about Bronny James, because this one really blew up on social media, and it really, I think, epitomizes the whole Bronny James, LeBron James dynamic, because there was a report out there by Chris Haynes that Bronny and LeBron, they were offered a chance to participate in the skills challenge, which they turned down. And Bronny James was offered an opportunity to participate in the Rising Stars game. The skills challenge, the Rising Stars game, he said nope, he's not going to be participating in any of them. And he's been a hot topic this season. I mean, we talked about it on the last show. There's reports out there that he's generated over $50 million in jersey sales. Yes, he isn't someone that typically would get that amount of money for a number 55 overall pick. The numbers, not great, averaging less than 5 points per game, shooting 36.6%. Has looked better in the G League, averaging almost 15 points per game. But still, I think this is one of those things, if you're Bronny James and you want to be in the skills challenge, just me kind of following LeBron for his entire career, I feel like LeBron wanted to do it, and then Bronny was like, no. And Bronny was like, I don't want to do it. This gives me the vibe of when you tell your parents, hey, can you drop me off like a block away from school? So like, you don't have to, it's like just walk up and be cool. Like, I think that's the vibe I'm getting from Bronny James, because it's kind of one of those things from a social media thing at this point where you just can't win if you're LeBron or Bronny, because if he did participate, everyone would say he didn't deserve it. But now he skips it. He's scared. He won't play against elite competition. Look, if you're a LeBron hater, this is more fuel. But truth is, I think for everything that he's had to go through the last couple of years, of course, he had the health issue, and then he's got people rooting for him and against him. He probably should not be on an NBA roster, for being 100% honest. So kind of taking this break and not throwing yourself into another thing to have to deal with this is probably the best decision for Bronny James.
Yeah, I do wish they would have did the skills challenge together. It would have reminded me when Giannis did it with his brothers. I thought that would be really cool.
Giannis wasn't a coward.
No,
right?
no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I definitely think it's a lose-lose situation for them, though. If he was in the Rising Stars challenge, let's be honest, the moment he misses a shot in that challenge, he's going to be a viral meme on Hate Central, on all over the internet, and it's going to
Brick
be a
Center. Don't forget Brick Center.
Hater Report. Yes, all
I love all those guys.
all those meme pages are going to kill Bronny, and so I understand both sides of it, but I feel like the skills challenge, that was fun. I think they could have did that together. I thought that would have been great television. The skills challenge, the deflectors, and you shouldn't have wasted a second round pick on them. That crowd probably would be in play a lot for that challenge, but the skills challenge, I think they could have did it for sure.
My response to the haters out there is Matt McClung winning the dunk contest with, here's how many minutes, zero NBA minutes. As bad as you think Bronny James is, he has more NBA minutes than Matt McClung. So honestly,
Context
if he was,
key on that one.
Context
is very key on that one. Matt McClung is like a G League superstar.
But still, it's like the fact that the point is this is an entertainment show.
Yeah,
it's like,
but I mean, Matt McClung also had some of the most viral like dunk mixtapes in high school. You know, I think that's the big thing right there.
But who has a basketball reference page? Is it Bronny James? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's true. But I mean, context is very key in that statement. You got to show love to Mac McClung, man. He's one of the best players in the G League right now, and he also, like I said, he has some of the most impressive dunks that we've seen even before he got to the NBA.
Shout out to our G League legends out there.
Exactly.
Yeah, shout out to our G League legends out there. Shout out to the Andre Wares of the world, right? But Noel, give me your thoughts on this LeBron and Bronny and them not participating.
No, I mean, I love him not participating. I think you guys hit it right on the money on the fact that no matter what he did, he was going to get criticized. But I think he's going to take this All-Star break. He's going to rest. You also got to remember it's his first NBA season. He's a rookie. He's been going back and forth from the G League to the NBA. He just started playing road games in the G League. He's actually doing a lot better. I've also been seeing a lot more opposing crowds actually showing him some love and kind of chanting his name when it's garbage time. He's a little more aggressive when he gets in there trying to get some buckets. But yeah, I don't think first year playing in a skills challenge would have been good for him. I would like to see it at some point, maybe in Bron's actual farewell tour. Maybe they'll do something cool like that. Maybe it'll be like Bron and LeBron against some other duo that, maybe Curry and someone else.
That's what they should do. They should have the Currys and a 2-on-2 challenge. Go with the Currys, the Thompsons,
LaMelo Alonzo,
the James, the Hardways, the Paytons, the Pippins, who else we got? Sabonis's. I take the Sabonis's. Was that
the Lopez brothers?
The Lopez brothers.
Yeah, you get brothers and
that's a cheat code. That's a cheat code right there. But no, absolutely.
The Holiday brothers. But no, yeah, I mean, I like that he's not doing that. I think it would have been good for the NBA. It would have drawn more eyes in a time that All-Star Weekend is going to need some more. Me and John are going to be there, by the way. So you guys say what's up if you see us. But yeah, I think he's his own person. And I think it's funny you bring up the kid telling their parent to drop him off a block away, because LeBron said that Bronny told him to do that when they're going to practice this year. So yeah, I mean, shout out Bronny, man. He's going to keep paving his own path.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that people are skimming through the truth, as you point out, is the fact that he was invited as a part of the G League representatives for the Rising Stars, not the NBA Rising Stars. That'd be a totally different thing. And for someone's averaging almost 15 points per game in the G League, it's not insane to think he would be a 15th man in that. But yeah, it's the Bronny James show in the NBA. It would have been great for ratings. People would have tuned in. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Big Lead. My name is Doug McKain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe. This is The Big League podcast. This is the show where if they're talking about it in the world of sports, we're going to be talking about it here. The biggest, the hottest stories, stuff you won't see on other shows. We're going to interview people that won't be on other shows, pop culture stuff. We're going to get to something else that we didn't get into today. I forgot what it was, but we'll get into that on next show. But yeah, definitely be sure to subscribe. It really mean a lot. People that are here for my coverage of the Rams, the NFL, or the Dodgers. I appreciate you guys joining me and us on this journey here on The Big Lead. Got our predictions in, and we'll see you guys Monday. That's going to do it here for The Big Lead. And until next time, I'm out.